Leo tweaked his adaptive armor's camouflage as he moved through the neon-drenched avenues of Haven's Edge. The ever-present fog swathed the spaceport city in a shimmering haze. Perched on the galaxy's fringe, Haven's Edge was a haven for those who preferred to operate in the shadows. 15 years of survival had honed Leo's instincts to a razor's edge, and they screamed a warning as he neared the Crimson Nebula, Haven's most notorious nightclub. The usual mix of smugglers and mercenaries seemed unusually on edge, their gazes darting nervously. Then he saw her. A flash of vibrant violet hair drew his attention. The woman moved with a sinuous grace that sparked a flicker of recognition. Her azure skin glowed beneath the harsh neon. Her form-fitting attire hinted at the presence of advanced Calypso technology woven into the fabric, tech he knew intimately. Intrigued, Leo activated his armor's scanning mode. The readings confirmed his suspicions, genuine Calypso artifacts, not the cheap imitations that flooded the black market. The woman paused at a street vendor, affecting a casual air, but Leo recognized the practiced sweep of her gaze across the crowd. He'd employed the same tactic countless times. She was being hunted. 3 figures in unremarkable clothing materialized from the throng, their movements too synchronized to be accidental. The woman stiffened almost imperceptibly, a change only someone watching as closely as Leo would detect. She murmured something, just loud enough for his enhanced audio to pick up. The phrase resonated, but he couldn't place it. The woman slipped into a narrow alleyway, her pursuers close behind. Leo cursed softly and engaged his armor's stealth mode, scaling a nearby building for a better view. The scene below unfolded with a practiced choreography. The woman whirled, her violet hair a blur in the mist, as she confronted her pursuers. "Seriously? 3 of you against little old me? I'm flattered." One of the men, his face obscured by a hooded cloak, stepped forward. "Lady Lyra, the Obsidian Syndicate sends its regards." "The artifacts, please." Leo almost lost his footing. Lyra? Could it be the same Lyra he'd known at the Calypso estate, the little azure-skinned girl who'd trailed him, peppering him with questions about Earth? "Go to hell," Lyra spat, her hand moving to a bracelet Leo recognized as a Calypso defense device. Now, the cloaked man chided, "No need for unpleasantness. We simply want what's rightfully ours." Lyra's laughter was sharp. "Rightfully yours? These artifacts have been in my family for generations. You're nothing but thieves and killers. Have it your way." The man gestured, and his companions drew weapons humming with illicit technology. Leo had seen enough. He dropped from his perch, his armor absorbing the impact as he landed between Lyra and her attackers. The adaptive camouflage shimmered, making him appear to coalesce from the fog itself. "Evening, gentlemen," he said casually, noticing the attackers involuntarily recoil. 3 against 1 seems a bit unfair, wouldn't you agree?" "This doesn't concern you," the leader growled. Behind him, Lyra tensed. "I don't need your help, stranger." Leo couldn't suppress a smile beneath his helmet. She sounded exactly as she had as a child, fiercely independent and stubbornly defiant. "Maybe not," he replied, his gaze fixed on the attackers. "But I'm offering it anyway." The leader fired. Leo's armor predicted the shot's trajectory, allowing him to evade while simultaneously launching a counterattack. The fight was short and savage. Years of survival training combined with Calypso tech made short work of the would-be abductors. As the last attacker fell, Leo turned to Lyra. She stood poised to fight, her bracelet glowing with barely contained energy. Her features were more refined than he remembered, but her eyes held the same fiery intelligence. "Who are you?" she demanded. Leo considered revealing himself, but hesitated. She was clearly in danger, and knowing his identity might only complicate matters. "Just someone who dislikes unfair fights." Her eyes narrowed. "That's Calypso tech you're wearing." "Stolen." "You could say it was a gift." He gestured toward the unconscious attackers. "Obsidian Syndicate. They're getting bold operating this far out. They're persistent, I'll grant them that." Lyra relaxed slightly but maintained her distance. "Why help me?" Leo shrugged, trying to keep his voice even despite the rush of memories her presence evoked. Maybe I enjoy mysteries, and a beautiful woman being pursued by the galaxy's most notorious criminal syndicate. That's quite a mystery. A faint smile touched her lips, though weariness still shadowed her eyes. Careful, stranger. Associating with me could be hazardous to your health. I enjoy hazards. Makes life more interesting. He gestured toward the club's back entrance. You should probably move before they wake up. These guys usually travel in packs. Lyra glanced at the fallen men, then back at Leo. You seem to know a great deal about them. I make it my business to know things. He started to turn away, then paused. A word of advice: the Obsidian Syndicate has infiltrated most of the major spaceports. If I were you, I'd avoid the obvious escape routes. And why should I trust your advice? Leo smiled, remembering her asking the same question years ago when he'd suggested sneaking into the Calypso library after hours. You shouldn't. Trust is dangerous out here on the rim. But I'm not the one hunting you. He activated his stealth mode, allowing the armor to merge with the misty darkness as he moved away. He heard her mutter, "Show off." Leo grinned. She had no idea who he was, but he intended to keep watch. He owed the Calypsos a debt, and more importantly, he needed to know why the Obsidian Syndicate was after her. The hunt was on, but this time he wasn't the prey. And maybe, just maybe, he could repay an old debt while figuring out why the sight of her still made his heart race after all these years. Astra watched the neon-laced fog swirl around her as she moved through the crowded streets of Haven's Edge. This spaceport city, perched precariously on the galaxy's fringe, attracted those who preferred to operate in the shadows, just like her. 15 years of survival had sharpened her instincts, and they were screaming warnings now as she approached the Crimson Nebula, Haven's most notorious nightclub. The usual assortment of smugglers and mercenaries seemed edgier than normal, their eyes darting nervously. That's when she saw him, a flash of metallic blue in the fog. The man moved with a fluid grace that sparked a faint sense of familiarity. His crimson skin seemed to glow beneath the harsh neon lights. His form-fitting armor hinted at advanced Caldwell tech woven into its fabric, tech she recognized instantly. Intrigued, Astra activated her bracelet scanning mode. The readings confirmed her suspicions: authentic Caldwell artifacts, not the cheap imitations flooding the black market. The man paused at a food stall, feigning casualness, but Astra noticed the practiced sweep of his gaze across the crowd. She used the same tactic herself. He was being hunted. 3 figures in unremarkable clothing emerged from the crowd, their movements too coordinated to be random. The man stiffened subtly, a change only someone watching as closely as Astra would detect. He muttered something, just loud enough for her enhanced audio to pick up. The phrase triggered a memory, but she couldn't place it. He slipped into a narrow alleyway, his pursuers close behind. Astra cursed softly and activated her drone, scaling a nearby building for a better view. Below, the scene unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. The man spun, a blur of blue in the fog, as he confronted his pursuers. Seriously? 3 against 1? How flattering. One of the men, his face hidden by a hooded cloak, stepped forward. Master Ronan, the Shadow Syndicate sends its compliments. The artifacts, if you please. Astra almost lost her footing. Ronan? Could it be the same Ronan she'd known at the Caldwell estate, the crimson-skinned boy who'd shadowed her, peppering her with questions about Earth? Get lost, Ronan spat, his hand moving to a gauntlet Astra recognized as a Caldwell defense device. Now, the cloaked man chided, no need for unpleasantries. We simply want what's rightfully ours. Ronan's laughter was sharp. Rightfully yours? These artifacts have been in my family for generations. You're nothing but thieves and murderers. So be it. The man gestured, and his companions drew weapons humming with illicit energy. Astra had seen enough. She launched herself from her perch, her boots absorbing the impact as she landed between Ronan and his attackers. Her drone shimmered, creating a distracting light show. Good evening, gentlemen, she said coolly, noticing the attackers involuntarily flinch. 3 against 1 seems a bit unbalanced, wouldn't you agree? This doesn't involve you, the leader growled. Behind him, Ronan tensed. I don't require assistance, stranger. Astra couldn't suppress a smile. He sounded exactly as he had as a child, fiercely independent and stubbornly proud. Perhaps not, she replied, her gaze fixed on the attackers. But I'm offering it regardless. The leader fired. Astra's drone intercepted the shot while she simultaneously launched a counterattack. The fight was short and brutal. Years of survival training combined with Caldwell tech made quick work of the would-be assailants. As the last attacker fell, Astra turned to Ronan. He stood ready to fight, his gauntlet glowing with barely contained power. His features were more defined than she remembered, but his eyes held the same fiery intelligence. Who are you? He demanded. Astra considered revealing herself, but hesitated. He was clearly in danger, and knowing her identity might only complicate things. Just someone who dislikes unbalanced odds. His eyes narrowed. That's Caldwell tech you're using. Stolen. You could say it was acquired. She gestured toward the unconscious attackers. Shadow Syndicate. They're getting brazen operating this far out. They're persistent, I'll give them that. Ronan relaxed slightly but kept his distance. Why assist me? Astra shrugged, trying to keep her voice neutral despite the rush of memories his presence stirred. Perhaps I enjoy puzzles and a handsome man being chased by the galaxy's most infamous criminal organization. That's quite a puzzle. A faint smile touched his lips, though weariness still clouded his eyes. Be careful, stranger. Associating with me can be hazardous to your well-being. I thrive on hazards. Makes life more stimulating. She gestured toward the club's back entrance. You should probably relocate before they revive. These types usually travel in groups. Ronan glanced at the fallen men, then back at Astra. You seem to know a significant amount about them. I make it my business to know things. She began to turn away, then paused. A piece of advice, the Shadow Syndicate has infiltrated many of the main spaceports. If I were you, I'd steer clear of the conventional escape routes. And why should I heed your advice? Astra smiled, recalling him asking the same question years ago when she'd suggested exploring the restricted sections of the Caldwell Library. You shouldn't. Trust is a liability out here on the rim. But I'm not the one hunting you. She activated her cloaking device, blending into the misty darkness. She heard him mutter, impressive. Astra grinned. He had no clue who she was, but she planned to keep watch. She owed the Caldwells, and, more importantly, she needed to know why the Shadow Syndicate was targeting him. The hunt was on, but this time she wasn't the quarry. And maybe, just maybe, she could settle an old score while figuring out why the sight of him still made her heart pound after all these years. From his vantage point atop the Crimson Nebula, Leo observed Astra navigate the crowded streets. Even amidst the dense fog, her vibrant pink hair was a beacon. She'd changed her jacket, but her movements remained precise and calculated. Getting sloppy, he murmured, noting how she stuck to the main thoroughfares. Any Shadow Legion operative worth their salt would be watching those routes. His armor's HUD highlighted for operatives tailing her, using the crowd for cover, never maintaining a direct line of sight for too long. But Leo was a master of surveillance, both hunter and hunted. Astra entered the Golden Dragon Noodle Shop, one of Haven's less reputable establishments. Smart move, Leo thought. The shop's owner was known for enforcing a strict no-violence policy with impressive security systems. He switched to thermal imaging, watching as she settled into a corner booth. The 4 operatives split up, 2 entering the shop, 2 remaining outside. Time for a closer look. Leo adjusted his armor's appearance to that of a typical Rimworld trader. Inside, the air was thick with steam and spices. Leo ordered noodles, choosing a seat with a view of both Astra and the operatives. She was different from the gangly teenager he remembered. A warrior's edge had replaced her youthful softness. What had happened since he left? Your noodles, sir, the server droid announced. Leo's voice caused Astra to tense, her eyes flicking towards him before quickly darting away. Interesting. Had she recognized something familiar in his tone? One of the Legion operatives approached her table. Mind if I join you? He asked, his tone deceptively casual. Astra's smile was icy. Actually, I do. I'm not in the mood for company. The man sat anyway. We just want to talk business. I told your friends earlier, Astra replied, go to hell. The operative leaned closer. The Legion always gets what it wants, Lady Astra. You're only making this harder on yourself. Am I? She took a sip of tea, seemingly unfazed. Tell me, does the Legion always send its B team for important acquisitions, or am I just special? Leo nearly choked on his noodles. The shy girl he knew would never have dared such open defiance. The operative's face darkened. You think this is a game? We know about the Keystone. Hand it over, and maybe we'll let you walk away. Keystone. Leo's interest piqued. The Caldwell Keystone was supposed to be a myth, a legendary artifact capable of unlocking ancient technologies. If you knew anything about the Keystone, Astra said coolly, you'd know better than to threaten me in public. She stood, dropping credits on the table. The operative grabbed her wrist. We're not done here. In one fluid motion, Astra twisted free, pressing something against his neck. Actually, we are. That's a neural disruptor against your carotid artery. One wrong move, and you'll spend the rest of your life drooling in a medical facility. Leo's respect for her grew. She was clearly more dangerous than he'd initially assessed. The operative raised his hands. This isn't over. It never is, Astra replied, keeping the disruptor trained on him until she reached the door, then vanished into the fog. Leo waited before following. The Legion operatives regrouped, speaking into encrypted comms. He'd have to hack their frequency later. As he tracked Astra, questions raced through his mind. The Keystone was supposed to be secured in the Caldwell vault. If she had it, something major must have happened. In the distance, Astra's pink hair disappeared into a rundown hotel. Leo found a perch across the street, settling in for a long night. What had she gotten herself into? And what was really going on with the Keystone? The fog thickened, but his mind remained sharp. Tomorrow, he'd have to get closer, maybe even make contact again. The Legion wouldn't give up easily, and despite her impressive display, she couldn't handle them alone. Even if she didn't know it yet, she needed him. And maybe, just maybe, this was his chance to make up for disappearing all those years ago. The first rays of dawn touched Haven's edge, but the persistent fog remained. Leo's armor adjusted to the changing temperature as he watched the hotel. The place Astra had chosen was predictable, inexpensive, easily overlooked, and with plenty of escape routes. Movement on a small balcony caught his eye. Astra, her pink hair pulled back, was practicing Caldwell combat forms, but with modifications Leo had never seen. His armor's enhanced vision picked up the shimmer of tech woven into her training gear. Not just defensive measures, but something offensive, too. Her movements were a fluid blend of Caldwell techniques and, was that Amazonian battle dance? The memory hit him hard. 12-year-old Leo, hiding in the cargo hold of an Amazonian ship, watching through the grating as warriors performed those same movements. The very ship that had unintentionally carried him away from the Caldwell estate. Quite a view, isn't it? A voice purred behind him. Leo barely reacted, years of training keeping him perfectly still. He recognized the gravelly tone instantly. Rook, he said without turning. Still playing both sides of every fence in the galaxy, I see. The information broker chuckled, settling beside him. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Astra. The Shadow Legion's offering a king's ransom for information on her whereabouts, Rook mentioned casually. Enough to buy a small moon. And yet, here you are, telling me instead of them. Maybe I'm telling them too, she grinned, revealing teeth a little too sharp to be entirely natural. Or maybe I'm repaying an old debt to a certain estate. Leo tensed. What do you know about the estate? I know the prodigal son might want to check his old channels. There's been chatter. Before Rook could elaborate, two figures entered the hotel below. Their casual clothes couldn't hide their military bearing. Legion scouts, Rook observed. They're getting better at blending in. Leo was already moving. How long before the main force arrives? 20 minutes, maybe less. They're being cautious after last night's mishap. She tossed him a data chip. Consider us even for Proxima. And just as quickly, she was gone. On the balcony, Astra had frozen mid-movement. She'd sensed something. Leo watched as she casually stretched, then slipped back inside, palming what looked like a miniature defense drone. Leo activated his tactical display. More Legion operatives were taking positions around the hotel. At least a dozen. This wasn't a simple capture mission anymore, it was a full-scale assault. He reached for his communicator, then stopped. Warning her directly would reveal too much. But watching her walk into an ambush. A memory surfaced. 10-year-old Astra, tears in her eyes after a fall during combat training. I don't need help, she'd insisted, even as he helped her up. Some things never changed. Suddenly, the hotel's front desk droid malfunctioned, its warning signals broadcasting on all frequencies. Any experienced runner would recognize it as a danger sign. Moments later, Astra emerged from a service entrance, moving purposefully. She'd changed into street clothes, her pink hair hidden beneath a hood. The defense drone hovered nearby, disguised as a companion bot. Clever girl. She'd spotted the trap and was already escaping. But she hadn't seen the Legion sniper setting up on the roof of the recycling plant across the street. The sniper's rifle hummed to life. Leo's armor calculated the shot trajectory. Sorry, he whispered. We're doing this my way. He launched himself from his perch, his armor's stealth mode shorting out from the sudden movement. Time seemed to slow as Astra looked up, her eyes widening. The sniper fired. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air where Astra had been standing a split second before. Leo's tackle carried them both behind a cargo container as return fire from her drone forced the sniper to retreat. You! Astra hissed, somehow managing to sound both furious and composed, despite their close proximity. She was already in a defensive stance. Following me now? Less talking, more running, Leo suggested, his display lighting up with hostile signatures. Unless you want to explain to the Legion how you got their operative to drool all over the noodle shop. A ghost of a smile crossed her face before vanishing. I work alone. Funnily enough, so do I. He gestured at their increasingly precarious situation. But right now, we've got about 12 heavily armed operatives converging on our position. He paused as his sensors picked up new signatures. Make that 16. They really want whatever you're carrying. Astra's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, where Leo detected a faint energy signature. The keystone? No, something else. Fine, she conceded as plasma fire started melting their cover. You know a way out? Leo's HUD highlighted a maintenance tunnel 30 meters away. Maybe. Trust me? No, but her eye sparkled with something that might have been amusement. Lead the way, mystery man. The tunnel opened into a bustling subterranean marketplace. Leo led the way, weaving through the throngs of vendors and shoppers, his armor's navigation system guiding them through a maze of narrow passageways. The Legion won't give up easily, he cautioned, his voice low. They'll have eyes on the spaceports, the train stations. I know how they operate, Astra replied, her tone grim. She shot him a sideways glance. Why are you helping me? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken history. Leo hesitated, the truth a tangled knot in his throat. Asterisk because I left you once and regretted it every day since asterisk he thought. Asterisk because seeing you in that noodle shop brought back every memory I've tried to bury. Asterisk instead, he said, maybe I just enjoy irritating the Legion. Astra didn't sound convinced. That armor, she said, her gaze fixed on his suit. There's only one set like it. It was designed for. A deafening roar cut her off. The marketplace behind them erupted in chaos as a controlled explosion rocked the area. Leo felt Astra slip something into his pocket as she yelled, "Meet me at the Rust Bucket Cantina." Sunset. If you're really who I think you are, we need to talk. Before he could respond, she vanished into the panicking crowd, his armor sensors losing her almost instantly. Leo found a relatively quiet alcove and checked his pocket. Inside was a small holographic projector. When activated, it displayed a younger Astra and himself, sparring on the Caldwell Estate's training grounds. Below the image were two words, *hello, Leo. He stared at the message, a slow smile spreading across his face. She had known. Maybe not right away, but she'd figured it out. The question now was, what game was she playing? The Rust Bucket at sunset. It could be a trap. Probably was a trap. But as he pocketed the projector and started plotting alternate routes through the city, Leo realized he didn't care. After 15 years of running, maybe it was time to stop. Maybe it was time to face not just Astra, but everything he'd left behind at the estate. The Rust Bucket Cantina lived up to its name. Leo arrived early, securing a booth in the shadows with clear sightlines to all exits. His armor's camouflage rendered him almost invisible in the dim lighting, but he knew Astra would find him. She always could. She arrived precisely at sunset, her pink hair now interwoven with subtle chrome strands that deflected scanning attempts. Clever. She wore a fitted black outfit that sent a familiar jolt through him. Some things hadn't changed in 15 years. "You know," she said, sliding into the booth opposite him, "normal people just send a message when they want to reconnect." "When have either of us been normal?" he countered, a wry smile playing on his lips. Her answering laugh was soft, genuine. "Fair point." She studied him openly. "Take off the helmet, Leo. I want to see your face." He hesitated only a moment before complying. The armor retracted, revealing features hardened by years of harsh living, but still retaining enough of the boy she'd known to make her catch her breath. "You grew up." Her eyes lingered on a scar that ran along his jawline. "Interesting." He touched the scar. "Amazonian training accident. Turns out they don't appreciate stowaways, even young ones. I remember when you disappeared." Something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. Uncle Rain said not to worry, but... Eric looked at Sarah. In her honeygold eyes, he saw not the usual playfulness, but something deep. The arrival of a waiter droid broke the spell. Astra tensed visibly when Leo ordered raw meat, her hand instinctively moving towards her weapon. Ren interfaced with the ship's targeting systems. She forced a laugh that sounded a little too high-pitched. No, it's just you're not going to. I mean, she glanced around nervously. You don't eat people, do you? Leo nearly choked on his drink. What? It's just, she was blushing now, her blue skin deepening in hue. I used to see Uncle Rain with Aunt Naomi, and he would, with his tongue, and she would. Understanding dawned. Leo burst out laughing, earning curious glances from nearby patrons. You think I'm going to eat you? He couldn't keep the amusement from his voice. Is that why you've been keeping your distance? Well, humans are predators, she mumbled, and Uncle Rain practically devours Aunt Naomi's face whenever they're together, and she trailed off, realizing how ridiculous she sounded. Oh, gods! That was kissing, wasn't it? Yes, Astra, that was kissing. His use of her old nickname made her flush even deeper. I promise I have no plans to eat you. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur. Though, there are other things I'd rather do with these lips. Eric looked at Sarah. In her honeygold eyes, he saw not the usual playfulness, but something deeper, almost divine. I'd like to feel it, and you're still beautiful when you're flustered. Before she could respond, his armor sensors blared a warning. Legion signatures. approaching fast. "Time to go?" she asked, already moving. "Time to go," he confirmed, his helmet reforming. "But this conversation isn't over. You always propose marriage to men you've just—" As they stood, she pressed something into his hand. A security card for one of Haven's luxury hotels. Room 1542. "We really do need to talk about the Keystone." "Just talk?" His smile was both shy and daring. "We'll see how good you are at not eating me." They split up as plasma fire shattered the cantina's windows. But Leo couldn't stop grinning. Some fears were worth facing head-on. And some reunions were worth waiting 15 years for. Now he just had to survive long enough to make it to that hotel room.